So Ahmed and I are old friends, and he asked me to come and speak a little bit about what's happening in the crypto economy. So I thought I'd share with you some trends that we have noticed, but more kind of pragmatically, I want to kind of share with you the areas we look at. Some of you may have seen me at various events talking about the trends, but what I'll do is I'll kind of quickly run through them with you. And then what we can do is deep dive on one or two other topics around areas where we are supporting and we are trying to help out, kind of bring this economy to a more mainstream world and get as much inclusion as possible, because it is a kind of a new world. And we just want to make sure that we get more and more people involved in this journey with us, right? So if I look at what's happening in the crypto economy, the way I look at it is there's certain things that you see, you hear, you feel, and then there are certain things you don't see, right? And the economy is a holistic economy where what you don't see is where all the activity of utility is happening, where things are actually being built and things are actually happening. The stuff you see is things like the cryptocurrency, the exchanges, the successes and failures, etc. Because that's what's in the news. And you hear that and you say, oh, crypto is dead. Nothing's going to happen in this space. It's the fringe world. It's a whole bunch of crazies who are doing stuff, and it's not going to go anywhere. And maybe they're right? And maybe they're right. I don't know the answer. Whether the cryptocurrency exists or doesn't exist in the future will determine. It's not going to be me or you or anyone else, right? But there's many, many things that blockchain and the crypto does in our lives that I also do talk about a lot, right? So if I run through some of the areas we look at obviously the future of finance, which is what everyone is used to, which is all the trading that we do, all the centralized and decentralized financial instruments that we have, the security, the ability to be able to be regulated or not regulated. So that's the future of finance, right? And I'll deep dive into future of finance and my thoughts about some of what's happening in that space. Then, of course, we look at tokenization. Tokenization in the sense of making sure that tokens are monetized, they're of utility, they're of use to some, whatever it is. And kind of the baby step into it was fractionalization, right? You could fractionalize apartments, you could fractionalize stuff, you could digitize it, etc. But now with the token economy, you're looking at it slightly differently. You're looking at it from a monetization point of view and see how you can actually bring it into the real economy, whether it's shares or whether it's property or whether it's anything in that space. We can talk a little bit about the metaverse, which everybody talks about. Metaverse to me currently is FOMO. It's a marketing tool. Everybody wants to be on the metaverse. Everybody says it's the precursor to the new internet. I don't know whether it is or it's not, whether we want to live in that space or not, but it is real in the sense that people are going into the metaverse. It is a digital manifestation of your lives. You immerse yourself in it, you move through it. Our kids probably are much, much better at it than we are, and they always will be because it's the new world for them. They think it is value. We may not think it's value, but I think that's the divide that we are in. It's a generational divide, and we have to kind of figure out how to bridge that generational divide, right? People like me who actually came through the world of when internet actually came to being, when computers actually were made, computers turned into mobile phones, and God knows what is going to happen in the future, right? So we're in that cusp of moving from one stage to the other. And that's going to be an interesting stage. Technology always races ahead, human psychology follows. And I think that's what's going to happen as we move towards the metaverse. The larger part of it, of some of crypto, is also the whole idea of supply chain and supply chain integrity, right? How do you make sure that there is a seamless way of moving stuff from A to B from a logistics point of view? How do you know that the food you buy or the vaccines that you use come along a pathway of real traceability and real provenance? How do you know the wine you drink is real? How do you make sure some of these things are happening? And the way they do it is you put them into an immutable format on a blockchain, and you can then track it all the way back, because once you have a genesis of putting the first block in and tracking it all the way through, you can always go back and trace it and say, hey, at this stage, this non-conformance happened. Is it good or bad? And should I throw away this vaccine, or should I throw away this wine, or should I throw away this vegetable because it didn't follow the protocols that it had to follow as it moved from A to B to C to D. So that's the supply chain side. Of course, then we talk about validation, right? So when blockchain gets validated, it's through mining. And so we do a lot of work in the mining space as well, whether you mine Bitcoin, which is proof of work, or you do work with Ethereum and others, which have now shifted out of that space. So we do a little bit of work with various authorities on helping make sure that that's done properly. And when I say properly is because there's this thing that everybody talks about, that Bitcoin validation costs a lot of energy. And it does cost a lot of energy, right? That's the whole point of validation. Many people are working towards finding a solution. One solution has to be found, everything else is rejected. Well, guess what? That rejected stuff is wasted energy, right, in many ways. So the question is, how do you ensure that a lot of that is taken into account when validations happen, and what happens to that? And the way we look at it is, we look at it from the fact that you should not be generating energy to create these validations. You should be reusing energy that is already there through its reuse of energy, load balancing, using excess energy that would be grounded anyway. If you could use it and bottle it into Bitcoin or bottle it into another token, might not be a bad thing. Now, the question is whether the actual cost of generating that versus the price of the commodity are commensurate. And at some point in time, the price falls to a certain degree that it's not worth mining anymore. And that's okay, right? The market decides that. We don't decide that. The market decides that, right? The market has a profitability index, and it follows that index and says, you know what, when you fall below that index, forget it. It's not worth it, right? And so nodes come and nodes go, and that's the whole concept of mining, right? And of course, we also look at identity, because all of us have some sort of an identity that we carry with us. And in many ways, identity is very much centralized today. So when a bank asks you for your utility statement, or a bank asks you for your proof of identity, and of course, if you've lived in the UAE long enough, you'll know you've got your Emirates ID. And once you give somebody an Emirates ID, every single data point of your life has been given away to somebody. And the question is why? If I want to know how old you are, or if you're over 18 years old, why do I need to be able to ask you for your birth date? I should be able to ask you a question, and the answer should be yes or no. So the question is, when you have self-sovereign identity, you have control over your identity, and you can share things as and when needed to be able to authenticate and identify yourself. And I think that creates a better sense of privacy and a better sense of making sure that your data belongs to you. You can also monetize that data as and when you wish. So if you look at what I went through in these trends, you can realize that there's a lot to crypto than just purely Bitcoin or trading or centralization or non-centralization of various products and services, right? So that is the context I want to talk a little bit about, that there is something above the water and there's something below the water. An iceberg, 9/10 of it is below the water and 1/10 is above the water. We always see the 1/10 and say, that's crypto. And crypto is dead because X failed or Y failed, and 30 billion was lost here and 20 billion was lost there. Every new technology goes through this inflection point. Whether you were in the internet when the first commerce started, to today when large amounts of money is being collected through centralization and centralized networks and exchanges, everything went through the same direction. Things go up. There's a lot of volatility along the way, and then things stabilize and grow, right? I've seen this about 2 or 3 times in my lifetime, right? But that doesn't mean innovation has to stop. Innovation is risk. In fact, innovation, I would say, is the highest risk you can take in your entire lives, because unless you walk to the edge, you will never be able to realize what falling is all about, right? And innovation is always walking at the edge. Right? Sometimes you fall, but many times you don't. And it's those many times you don't is when things get created. That's the first kind of lesson from my experiences in developing technologies and being in venture capital and funding startups and many companies in my life. The second thing you'll realize also is that not all the things are good. There will always be bad actors in this world. And the bad actors and good actors in balance have to tip each other and say the good outweighs the bad, because the bad will always exist. Whether it's a regulated industry or a non-regulated industry, you will find that there's always going to be a good and bad. One cannot say that regulation is the best protector in the world. Regulation is a good guardrail, right? Without that guardrail, things don't work very well, but ultimately guardrails do break, and they have broken many, many times in our lives, right? And if you look at a lot of the large company collapses that happen, they happen in regulated spaces. The question is, today we live in a world which is trying to figure out what regulation should look like or could look like, whether it should happen or not happen, and how decentralized networks take existence and how trust gets built through consensus. One wonders whether it is the fault of regulation or whether it's the fault of humans, right? And my argument is that everything is about human psychology. All failure points today are made by humans. Algorithms generally don't create problems, right? The issue is, psychologically, are we ready for a decentralized world or not? And that's the issue that I want to talk about, specifically in the area of finance, where I spend a lot of my time. So let's look at what happened over the last few months, where things like the collapse of Celsius and FTX and others happen. And people say, well, look at what happens when you entrust so much money in a young guy who doesn't know what he's doing and expect an outcome which is going to be different than what happened, right? And I say it's not about the age in many ways. Of course, experience matters, but it's also about the fact that if you really want to break the law, there's nobody stopping you. Nobody can stop you. You can always break the law, right? We are humans after all. The question is, how do you make sure that there's exactly what I said, enough guardrails to ensure that a lot of those failures are caught early, or there's predictability on those behaviors, so you can say, perhaps if I had done something different, the outcome would have been slightly different. And maybe if I look back in retrospect, that could have happened, that should have happened, right? As there's a saying out there that says, if it's too good to be true, it probably, is not, right? And when I looked back and say what kind of yields people were giving for your tokens and for your lending and what kind of yields were being created, one might say, you know what? The market in real economy gives you 1-2%, and the crypto economy was giving you 10% or 4% or 5% a month. How does that reconcile? How do you reconcile that, right? How do you make sure that you say, oh, okay, one is giving me nothing and one is giving... You can't turn around and say, oh, it's the governments, they can print all the money they want, they can do whatever they want. Sure they can. Sure they can. But we are the ones who are electing those governments who create those monopolies, right, at the end of the day. So in many ways, that fundamentally is not the issue, right? The issue is, in many ways, that if somebody creates something to create fraud, it can be done, right? And when we look at regulated entities, and I work a lot with banks and other regulated entities, and I try to bring them into the crypto world, the fundamental issue that I deal with is regulations. Because in many ways, regulations are the protector or the guardrails to ensure that these kind of things don't happen. Is there a guarantee that they will not happen? Absolutely not. But there's a likelihood and a chance that there would be some early indicators to protect people as they take this journey forward, right? Many people lost a lot of money, and many people felt that they lost confidence in this marketplace of the crypto economy, and we need to gain that confidence back. And it happens over time. It doesn't happen by just somebody saying, okay, khalas, washed, done, let's start a new one, and the new world is going to be just a DeFi world. There's not going to be any centralization. I must say, human psychology hates decentralization in many ways, right? And why does human psychology hate decentralization? Ultimately, if something goes wrong with your wallet or I want to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey man, I'm stuck, help me out here, right? Maybe I'm old school, but at least there's somebody out there. In a decentralized economy, there's nobody out there, right? It's algorithms running everything in the background. You're a participant in that. If somebody meddles or fiddles with the algorithm, good luck to you. And by the way, I probably see a few techies here who can code the hell out of anything in the world and break every single security that is out there in the world. And I look at them and I go, you know, you are the ones who could potentially do something like that, where you could break the systems that are created, right? So I think we are in a world where we are inventing new things, finding new things, and in that journey, we're going to have the ups and downs, right? And I hope there are more ups than downs, right? And that's how innovation happens over a period of time. That's the finance side of things. Nothing controversial about it, it's just reality. So how do we gain that confidence? How do we get back into the world of confidence building to ensure that we continue the process of innovation and progress? A lot of it is the fact that we really need to rethink the fundamentals of what we are doing. And I truly believe that there is a way to regulate things that are non-intrusive but needed, right? And if we can find that balance, and it's always a balance, it's neither here nor there, you can regulate something completely out of business, or you can regulate something so lightly that it's ineffective. I think we need to find a middle ground where things kind of start working towards an outcome which is favorable to the majority, right? They will never be favorable to everybody, but they're favorable to the majority. And I think we need to get there over time, right? And so as everybody, you know, goes back and rethinks their lives and tries to figure out where they sit in this crypto world, you'll realize that you'll have to do it step by step, slowly, and we'll see where life goes, right? Now, what are the implications of this? The implication of this is that I don't think in the near term you're going to see huge spikes in any of the, you know, currencies or whatever that you guys are working on. I think it's going to be a gradual movement towards figuring out a good balance and continuing that thing. Now, I could be wrong, but the era of cheap money is over, right? COVID brought in a lot of cheap money, and that era is now gone, and now we're in the world of normalization, and that normalization will take some time. Let's shift gears into the metaverse world, right? And we talk about the metaverse a lot, and we say, okay, is that going to be the new world? Is that going to be the world we're going to be in, etc.? Very likely, yes. Very likely that technology will bring us in a world where we will have immersive experiences in a fully digital world, and we will have experiences in the physical world. And sometimes we will merge the two, and sometimes we will demerge the two. That's just going to be happening as we move forward anyway. The question is going to be, how seamlessly are we going to move between those two worlds, and what will life look like in the future? Well, that's for our kids to decide, and our kids probably live more in the digital world than in the physical world, which is a bit of a shame, right? I'd rather they go and play in the playground and climb things and fall than to be immersed in an iPad all day long. But I think we'll need to figure out that balance again as to what life is going to look like in the future. Saying that, I believe that the native currency of the metaverse, which is the NFTs and other stuff, are going to happen. They will have value. And a lot of them will have value of experiences. So when you bake experiences into NFTs and make them a little bit more utility-oriented, people think that they have value, right? An example could be you could develop your own little design of a certain product or whatever it is, and that's your own digital, let's say, manifestation of what you own. But that doesn't mean that it's exclusively living in the digital world. You could actually take it and get it manufactured, and then it becomes physical, and vice versa. So you could move between the physical and digital world seamlessly as you choose. So what does the new world look like? Today, you depend on the big brands who somehow have predicted what you like, and they manufacture it in masses and sell it to you. Maybe tomorrow's world would be that you are the designers of the future, and you could create your own designs and put them in the marketplace and see how the market reacts, right? And if the market wants to pay for it, that's well and good. Maybe you could be designers of the next experiences and be able to monetize it by putting them into the metaverse. And that's okay as well, right? So I think the whole idea of democratizing the whole idea of the creative economy, I think is exciting, because there's no monopoly of design, there's no monopoly of creation, and there's no monopoly on creativity in general, right? We are all creators in our own right. So be able to put them into a marketplace and to be able to monetize them is not a bad thing. So that's the world of how the metaverse could evolve into in the future. The future will arrive very, very quickly because technologies are moving very fast. When I was in Davos last January, I walked into one of the booths where I could put on these glasses, and there was an equipment that came in front of me, and I could actually play with it and learn how to use it, right? Now imagine if I had similar glasses where I could put on some glasses and I say, you know what, something in my car is broken. I need to go fix it. But why take it to a mechanic? I'm good. I've got 2 arms and I can, do some mechanical stuff. And I put them on and it can walk me through a process of fixing things. I would love to do that. A lot of you would love to do that because it's just fun. So these hybrid things are happening. They're evolving and they will continue to evolve into a world where you could self-serve. You could do a lot of things yourself, etc. Right? Now, saying that, of course, the last topic I'll share with you is the whole concept of identity. Every piece, every human being, every IoT device, everything will have some sort of an identity. If you look at the internet, everything had an IP address, right? And that was that identity. That was your identity. If you go into the internet today and you type something, somebody finds you through your IP address. That is your kind of your one-to-one identity with the system that you're playing with. But what if you take that one level away and create a digital identity for all of us, and we can monetize all the stuff we create through that identity, and retain our ownership and our own ability to be able to do what we want to do with it. That world is likely and possible, right? So if you look at an overall view, what's happening, there are lots and lots of topics that are happening which are beyond just purely the currency side of things. And that's really what the message is for today. Now, what's happening in the region? Amazing things. There are over thousands of companies that have showed up in Dubai because Dubai is one of those areas which allows people to bring new ideas and to flourish. And that's what's happening here. Now, as I said, that's the good news. The bad news is that maybe 950 of those companies are completely useless, complete failures. And that's okay, because we're not an economy and we're not a country that is stopping innovation. We are inviting innovation. And the cost of that innovation is going to be lots and lots of failure along the way. And hopefully out of that will come out a few gems that will come and develop and build into something more substantial. So saying that, I am based in Dubai. I do travel a little bit, and I work a lot with large regulated entities, sovereigns, governments, companies, etc., to bring them into this economy. It's a big, heavy burden and a very difficult road ahead, because to every one person that says yes, there are at least 9 or 10 people that say no. And that's okay, but it's the slow conversion that matters, and that's what we do. We start with education, we educate more and more and more, and once the education stops, we start solutions, and then we build and build and build, and then we actually put it out in the marketplace to see how the market reacts. And once that happens, you see new innovation get flourished and built. So thank you for coming here, and thank you for being part of the economy, and I'm here for you. So that's a very interesting world, right? I grew up when there was literally no communications in the form that we know of today, right? And I look back at that time and I said, I could still meet my friends, I could still go play outside, I could still interact with them. And what changed, right? Today, I go to a, public event or wherever it is, all I see is people pulling out their mobile phones and sending messages to everybody and saying, where are you? Or WhatsApps to each other and saying, where are you? If I take that away, you can still find people, right? It's not that it can't. So I think you're absolutely right. The generation that has lived with it did not know that the world existed without it, right? So they live in a world where they just are now conditioned that that is the reality for them, right? There's no good and bad about it. It's just how it is, right? So absolutely, you're right. When you've only lived in that world, that is your reality. And you know what? That reality will change in the following generation when they will look back and say, you know what? These guys used to use mobile phones. What the hell is a mobile phone, right? I don't need a mobile phone to talk to somebody. I just think about it.
Use that blockchain technology.
Yeah, exactly. And who uses blockchain technology? What does it do? Waste energy? What is this, right? So you never know. And so if you were to look at blocks of life, the block of life without internet, the block of life with internet, and now the block of life with crypto and exchanges and whatever is happening, who knows what the next block is going to look like? But they will always look back one generation and say, man, these guys are old, right? And you'll be one of those, right? All of you who are 40s right now. So I agree with you. I think it's how technical innovation works in blocks, right? So thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.